don't work for me. Don't work for me. Sold that bag long ago at a big loss. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. And today's video, I'm going to talk to you about my luxury regrets, or 5 of my luxury regrets. And how this video has came about is I was talking to one of my friends very recently over coffee about, do I regret getting into buying luxury handbags? And do I regret going down this rabbit hole? Do I regret starting to spend this crazy money? Do I regret buying handbags that cost X amount of pounds? And no, I don't regret getting into buying these handbags. And we talked about this whenever I put out a video recently on judgment on buying luxury handbags and regret and dealing with that. And some of this, I suppose, is a little bit to overlap. And no, I don't regret getting into buying luxury handbags, because I've said before, and I will say it again, I did not start buying luxury handbags until I was in a safe financial position to do it. I did not buy luxury handbags and spend this amount of money on bags until my financial house was in order. And I think that that takes away the regret from getting into this, because nothing else was at risk and there was other financial, far more financial important priorities put in place and addressed and sorted, and monies applied to before I started spending money on handbags. But it did lead on to the conversation and got me thinking to what are some of my luxury regrets. And I don't mean by this specific items that I regret buying. This is not specific items that I have thought about, oh, shouldn't have bought that. Because obviously there are some of them too. And if you want me to do another one of those videos, I can absolutely do that. But this is themes, I suppose, of luxury regrets that I have. And the first one that stands out to me, and this by far came to my mind as number 1 and was in my mind and something that I very much regret doing and have a regret as to how I went about it. And it was buying the bags that I thought that I should buy and not following my gut instinct and my heart. It was whenever I started buying luxury bags, because of the amount of money that was applied to and involved in buying luxury bags, I felt like I had to buy the proper handbag. I felt like I had to buy a big bag. It had to be a proper handbag, not one of these small mini type things. It had to be a grown-up handbag. And even though we all know that I'm no spring chicken, I don't feel like a grown-up sometimes, but it had to be like a grown-up proper handbag. And it was the bags that I thought I should have been buying, or that other people thought I should have been buying. So if you were going in to look at a bag and the SA or your friend was saying to you, oh, but the bigger version is only £200 more, and it's the bigger version and it's a more substantial bag and you're going to get more into that bag and it's going to cover more uses and you're going to be able to use it for more things. And I was buying what I thought I should buy. And a really obvious example to this comes to mind for me is the Brea in the MM size that I had. And I bought that bag. It's a big bag for me. It's a big bag. I bought it in San Francisco. Although I was buying the big bag, I probably knew deep down by that point crossbody is what worked for me. I bought a separate crossbody Louis Vuitton strap at an extra $300-400 to go with the bag, and I wore the bag once and I wore it for less than an hour, and I sold it at a loss because it was a bright colour obviously with me. It was in absolute pristine condition. I then sold the strap as well because I had no need for the strap, and I remember this little naggy gut feeling instinct pulling at me whenever we went into the boutique in San Francisco saying, oh, I wish they had, like a small crossbody type bag that I could maybe use on a more regular basis. Well, of course they did have it, but I didn't think to ask for it, or I didn't think that it was worth the money to spend that amount of money on a small crossbody type bag. Like if we think the pochette accessoire or the multi-pochette or one of the smaller bags, I, in my mind at that time, didn't think it was worth the money to buy a smaller crossbody pouch type bag, even though that is the type of bag that I would have used very regularly, probably every day that I wasn't using that big massive Neverfull. Probably would have got so much use, probably would have been a brilliant buy, would have been a buy that would have done so much for my wardrobe and could have been used that much. I struggled against feeling that it was worth it because it was so small, and I bought the substantial handbags that I thought is what I should buy whenever you're spending that amount of money. Of course, those big handbags don't work for me. Don't work for me. Sold that bag long ago at a big loss, pristine condition. And I wish I could go back in time, and I did the previous time machine tag, which was luxury regrets and good things. But this really stuck out to me when we were having this conversation, that is one of the regrets I have, that I didn't accept the type of bags that I use earlier, that I didn't accept that you don't have to buy what you think you should buy, and that I didn't figure out that the worth of the bag would have been worth it for me because it's what I would have actually used and what I actually would have got my use and enjoyment out of, rather than a bigger, more professional handbag looking, grown up looking handbag sitting on a shelf that never ever got worn. And that's absolutely number one of my luxury regrets. Number two, and I struggle with this one a little bit with myself, because for myself it's a little bit controversial, and it's the classic flap. Regret number two is not buying the Chanel classic flap sooner. But if you've heard this story before, I set myself a professional goal, and I'm very goal driven in my professional life, and I set a professional goal that if I achieved that goal, and when I obtained that goal, I would buy myself the Chanel classic flap. And I specifically had in my mind that I would buy myself it in black, because I use this bag as a work bag, especially now that I've had the strap extended, that it fits more comfortably under my shoulder and it can go cross body. So I use this as a work bag. I work in a corporate business type environment, so a black classic flap was the perfect type of bag to fit in with that. And I had said to myself that when you achieve this goal, as a reward to yourself for this goal, because it was a goal that may never have happened, it was a very it's something in my chosen profession that a lot of people will go through their whole careers and will never obtain or will never reach. And so it wasn't guaranteed. It was a big thing. And I said I would buy myself the Chanel classic flap when I achieved it. And I struggle with this one. I don't regret having that attached to this, because I think this is a fabulous bag to have got as a reward for myself. And it means a lot to me because of that. But because I had attached this bag to that specific achievement, I have lost count of the amount of price increases that this bag would have went through between when I could have afforded to buy it and when I did buy it, because I was waiting for this goal. So as much as it is very special that it's attached to that goal, and it means that to me, I paid so much more for it because I waited for that, and I could have saved so many price increases. And when I say I regret, even if I had bought other classic flaps sooner, but in my mind, I was waiting for the Chanel classic flap until I got that goal, and I kind of just lumped them all in together at that point. So all the colours, all the everythings, and I could have bought colours that I loved, or I could have bought something else much sooner whenever the Chanel classic flaps were significantly lesser cost than they are now. And I've had this for a while, so I paid not today's price for this. I think it's up maybe £1,500, maybe 2,000 since I bought this, but I still could have bought it that much less if I had bought it sooner. At number three, and this is another big one, and it is buying luxury and keeping it for good. For good. To when? I used to buy shoes, Christian Louboutin shoes. I think I've said before that my first luxury designer love was shoes before handbags, believe it or not, when you look around us now. And I first got into Louboutins before I got into bags, and I used to buy shoes that were occasion shoes, not shoes that you could wear all the time, because in my mind, and it goes back to buying what I thought you should have bought, in my mind it wasn't worth it, or it wasn't worth that amount of money to buy it, to pay that amount of money on a pair of shoes that I was going to use all the time. I know. But say like a casual pair of shoes, like I know I have a couple of pair of trainers, but that in my mind at the time wasn't worth it because they're trainers. And why would you spend that amount of money on trainers? But I was spending that amount of money on shoes that I was wearing once or twice because they were for good and they were occasion shoes. And there's 2 points to this. One is the ones that you were buying that you could only wear on certain occasions, either because of the height or because they were very dressy or that just not something I would wear during the day. And this is even before children. And I was spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds of those, and they weren't getting worn because they were for specific occasions. And the other side of it is when I started also buying handbags as well, I kept them for good. So you would buy all this, apart from the Neverfull was used from day one, but I remember buying my first Chanel bag, and it was the Chanel Boy. And at the start, it sat on the shelf. Actually, it didn't even, telling you a lie. I was so precious about it because it was so much money and it was for good that it actually stayed in its box. Now, you shouldn't keep bags in their dust bags in their box because they sweat and it can actually affect your bag, so you shouldn't do that. But I was keeping it not even on the shelf to look at. How times have changed. But not even on the shelf to look at. I was keeping it in its dust bag, all wrapped up in its box, because it was so expensive and for good. And I regret doing that. I regret not just, now I do obviously have learnt and do it now, but I regret not sooner just wearing it. Just wearing the stuff. I really try not to baby my items and to use them. Like I use, there it is right there. That was helpful. The rose gold 17C in the mini, that absolute unicorn that costs an absolute fortune. I use that bag. I had that bag on not that long ago going for lunch to meet a friend. The tweed, I use the tweed. I use the lambskin. I very much do not baby my bags. I probably go too far to the other side. You've all seen the state of my first Neverfull. I probably should baby them a bit more or look after them a bit more. But I now have learnt that lesson and very much take the view that I buy these things to use. And I use them as much as I can. And I regret when I started buying good things, more expensive things, that they sat on shelves or stayed in boxes and I didn't use them, either because I was buying ones that couldn't be used very often or that I was keeping them for good. I was keeping them for a special occasion, and the problem with that is, one, they're not getting their cost per wear, they're not getting used. Two, they're sitting in a shelf in a box, and three, that special occasion might never come, or it might come once or twice and you've paid all this amount of money for something and it spent most of its life in the box. And that is a regret that I have, that I think it's because whenever, and I spoke about my background before, my financial background, and I think it's because when I started buying these items, I was so overwhelmed by the cost of them and overwhelmed that I could now afford them and that I could now have them, that I wasn't comfortable with them and I wasn't comfortable owning them and I wasn't comfortable having them and using them. But that, not fear, but that feeling and that self-consciousness and uncomfortableness led me not to use and enjoy them, and I regret that it took me so long to get comfortable with that and leaving them sitting there for good. Because use your items. I'm not saying destroy them. As I say, I can go sometimes too far, but use them. You know, we're spending all this money on them. Use them. And that's regret number 3 for me. Number 4, this still hurts, and it is selling bags when I did not know what I was doing, and selling bags without doing proper research. And there are 2 bags that come to mind. There is a Speedy 25 in the on point leather in the most beautiful raspberry colour, which I think I may have a picture of that I can put in. And oh my goodness, I sold this bag for a ridiculously low price. I didn't know what I was doing. At the time, I only really knew to sell bags on eBay, which, oh, be careful. We've had videos on this channel before about eBay, and Dale and I have a collab from a while ago that's still on our channels about selling bags, but I didn't know where to look. I wasn't on Instagram at this point. I wasn't really into social media or knew much about it. I didn't know about consignment, about resellers, about Fashion File, about places to sell your bags to, or where to look for research about what the bag should have been sold for. And I sold it for a ridiculously low price. And I regret it. I regret not doing more research. And I even regret selling the bag. And it's not that I have seller's remorse about the bag, because I genuinely at that point didn't use the bag anymore. But for what I sold it for, I would rather still have it for the times that I do use. I would have used it rather than the amount of money I sold it for, because it was that ridiculously low. The second one is... Okay, the second one is a square mini in caviar. You know, that now discontinued leather that everybody wants and loves and is very hard to find. A square mini in caviar in the same colour as this 18B teal turquoise type colour. It was the square in the traditional quilting pattern. I sold that for silly money. Silly money. I'm not even saying that I should have kept it and tried to make a profit on it. Not even talking about that. The amount of loss I made on that bag and the amount I sold that bag for under retail. What was I doing? It hurts still. It's ridiculous. And it's again because I didn't know where to do my research. I didn't do my research. I didn't know where to look. Even selling it through consignment with the consignment fee coming off it, I still would have got a lot more for that bag. And that one really hurts because it was ridiculous and I feel really, really foolish in that. And that's big regret for me, that I should have just been patient and waited and knew what I was doing and found out where you could sell bags and the prices. And yeah, that one hurts. Number 5 on this luxury regret journey. These videos are so uplifting, but I do think they're very helpful. I think they're very helpful for anybody watching these videos who may shop, and I think they can be little lessons to learn. But number 5 is kind of a 2-in-1 again, and it is sale shopping. And it is shopping without really knowing or considering what worked for me and my body shape. And they both go together. Sale shopping, and I'm not talking about in this, if you see an item that you've wanted and that you've been looking for and it goes into sale, absolutely jump on that, because you're saving some money because it's something you wanted anyway. What I regret doing is sale shopping and just looking through the sale, not for things that I had ever on my mind, not for things that were on my radar, not for things that I ever really wanted, and buying them because they were in the sale. And that's not really a saving, because I didn't really want them and I never really wore them. And so what I was saving was actually still costing. And the other side of that was shopping the sale. And you'll know if you've watched my channel for a while, I have been losing quite a bit of weight, and I still have some to lose, but I have lost so far 2 stone, and that's 28 pounds, by the way. So I was shopping whenever I was uncomfortable with my body, I was uncomfortable with my size. I'd put a lot of weight on. My dad died very suddenly and I put a lot of weight on. I put 3 stone on. And I didn't know my body at that shape. I didn't know what suited. I wanted to hide because I wasn't used to this body. It wasn't how I normally looked. I didn't know how to dress it. I didn't know how to, I just was uncomfortable and didn't know what to do. And I sale shopped for still half decent clothes, not like designer, but still half decent priced clothes for things, and I would have kept them just because they fit. And I think it was because as I started to lose weight, I was so delighted that something that I ordered actually fit, because for so long nothing fit, that I would buy them because they fit, but they might not have suited me. They might not have worked for my body. They may have made me look actually far bigger than what I was. They didn't fit in with my wardrobe. I couldn't style them. I didn't know where to start to style them because they weren't clothes I would normally wear. They weren't styles I would wear. They didn't go with anything. And it was complete not a waste of money. And it just hung because I didn't even know what to do with it. Even though I could get it on and it maybe fit and it maybe covered things up. But I didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know where to start. And that is regret number 5. Regret number 5 is buying things in the sale just because they're in the sale, but they're not really what I wanted, or not what I wanted to wear, or not anything interest in. And also buying when I was uncomfortable and not knowing how to dress, not knowing how to style it, and buying it just because it fit. And it's, if you've put weight on, and I can now say this from experience, it's so easy to do. It's so easy because it fits. You're like, it fits. And it's a complex emotional time, and it can be so easy to do, but for me it just didn't work. It all turned out to be a waste of money. I would say maybe 99 to 100% of it, total waste of money. So that's another regret that I have. I regret shopping whenever I was, 1, in that mind frame, 2, just buying it because it was in the sale, and 3, having no idea what I was going to do with it and how it was going to fit in my wardrobe, and in fact wasn't going to fit. So those are my 5 for today, 5 luxury regrets on my shopping journey, or if that's what we want to call it, on my luxury journey. And they're 5 areas that I hope that if you've fallen into any of these, hearing me say them out loud will help whenever it comes to shopping yourself and buying things that are actually worth your money. Thank you so much for watching me. Thank you for being here. Please take care, and I will see you again in the next one.